Hello everyone and welcome back. If you are returning, welcome to my channel. If you are new, my name is Nature Angel and today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I saw some other school psychs do this video and I thought this could be fun because I like doing Q&As and I do them every once in a while, but the difference with this is I'm going to type in some school psych related questions on Reddit that people have asked and I'm going to just answer them to the best of my knowledge. So we're gonna do that. If that sounds interesting to you, stay tuned. I have my laptop right here. I don't know if you can see it, but I'll be typing them in and I will also try to pop them like on the screen right here when I do the questions. So stay tuned for more. Alright, the first question I found, it says job interview tips. This person is applying to their first job. They don't really know what to expect. And the one question that I know I'll be asked is something along the line of how to use RTI to identify SLD, as next year in NJ you will no longer be able to use the discrepancy model. Does anyone have any tips or potential questions that I should prepare for? Now, I'm obviously not working in New Jersey, so I actually have a whole video on just like different questions that you may be asked when you have a job interview. But the thing is that I had my job interview in 2021, so the questions could be different. Also, the fact that it's in a different state completely. But what I will say is they're not using the discrepancy model anymore. I actually kind of like that. How to use RTI to identify specific learning disability. So I didn't learn it that way. We use a discrepancy model in my schools, and I know sometimes I personally have a problem with that. What I would say, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, but if we're using response to intervention, RTI, to identify specific learning disability, I think there should be a lot of information right there. Because if you're putting all these interventions in place and you have a tiered system, so they started in the general system all the way at the bottom, and you know, then they moved to tier 2, then they moved to tier 1, and they're still struggling, there should be enough data. Like, we tried this intervention. Well, what intervention was it? Was it evidence-based? How long were you doing it for? Were you implementing it correctly and consistently all the time and often? But that, having that information, and if they are still doing poorly, then I think that right there would help you to identify specific learning disability. Like I said, we don't use that system to identify specific learning disability. We use the discrepancy model. So that's what I would do and what I would say if I was asked that question, but I have no idea if that's right. If any of you have anything different or think that the answer would be something different, definitely leave that down below because I would also like to know how you would respond to that question. But also, to go back to any tips or potential questions that I should prepare for, if they are similar to the ones that I had before I got the job, I'm not gonna go into all of them, but I did get asked like what's the difference between a 504 plan and an IEP plan. I got asked like basically if I was in a difficult situation where the parent was angry and upset and felt like they weren't being heard at a meeting, how would I react? I do remember those two, and there were a bunch of other questions, but those are some questions that could be asked in an interview for becoming a school psychologist. I just found another one that's older, it's 4 years old, but they asked a lot of questions in it, and I'm just gonna go, I'll just say them in order and then I'll say my answer. So the first one is, do you regret being a school psychologist? 2, how stressful is it for you? 3, what is your day-to-day duties? 4, at the end of the day, are you glad you're a school psychologist? 5, any advice that you wish that you knew? So I feel like I have answered a lot of these questions in the past, but I'm gonna answer them really quickly. You could probably find the longer explanation that I have for them in previous videos that I have done. But the first one, do you regret being a school psychologist? No, I do not. How stressful is it for you? It's honestly not that stressful for me because I have really good self-care and I do not take my work home with me. So even if I'm stressed during the day because I'm really busy or, you know, I'm doing all this stuff, once I'm home, that's me time. 3, what is your day-to-day duties? That's really hard to say because every day is a different day and I have 2 different schools, so very different dynamics in where our duties lie. I might be doing more crisis in the one, more testing in the other, more counseling, or more free time to be able to do things like social skills and groups. So that changes all the time. At the end of the day, are you glad you're a school psychologist? I am. I love a lot of things about it. And number 5, any advice you wish you knew? I honestly always say I wish I knew how to deal more with like the community crisis and how to respond to that, because we learn a lot about like how we want to support these students, but I feel like I didn't learn about, well, what happens in the community and how that affects them. I mean, we talked about how it affects them, literally, but no real, I didn't feel like I had any advice on how to actually go about making it better, if that makes sense. I don't know how many of these questions I'm gonna do, but I don't want this video to be super long, so I'm just gonna do as many as I can. If I see the time's going on for too long, I'll be like, all right, that's enough questions. The next question is though, what do reasonable efforts to obtain parental consent for evaluation look like in your district? And this person was saying how basically they notify someone 3 times via mail before consent is assumed and assessments are started. So that is very different from ours. We do not start testing unless consent is given. We don't assume consent in Virginia. So we do try to make multiple efforts. It's usually the ICC, the instructional compliance coordinator, will contact the parents. Sometimes the social worker will contact them, not to get consent, but you know, if they have a social, they might be like, hey, we can't start the social until you sign that consent form. But if they don't, then, you know, we're just like, well, you never gave consent. And if they do and it's last minute, it becomes a whole thing. Usually if it's too close, we'll just use what we have if we have anything. Ooh, I like this next one. It's like, would you recommend this profession in the current school climate? So it says, I'm in the beginning of my master's that will lead to ASP certification. I'd like the sub's opinion on the profession, keeping in mind the post-COVID school environment, the amount of schooling and time needed for the certification, and initial compensation. This sub tends to trend negative, so any positive outlooks would also be appreciated. So, I mean, I've only been working in this school climate and I had my internship right when COVID was happening. To me, this is just how it is, and that's kind of sad, but we can't do anything about it. And I do think though that I would recommend going into it in this school climate because they're needed, and each school again is going to be so different. Like you might have some that have the virtual option that are still all remote. You might have it all in person. I know that both my schools are in person, but I know that the year before I came to work, it was a virtual year. Like everyone, you know, was virtual because of the pandemic, but they had an extra year of that. So it's going to look different than how we grew up going to school, but I think this effect is going to happen and we're going to see it for years to come. And I don't think it should stop someone from trying to be a school psychologist, especially when you can do so much good in the schools while it's like this. So I would still recommend doing it. All right, so there is another one that is saying hygiene talks. Hi everyone, I'm a first year school psych and I was hoping to pick everyone's brain about a matter I have not had to deal with. I met with a 3rd grade student daily at the end of the day as a checkout to debrief and discuss the day's challenges and successes. I've noticed recently that he has a body odor. A student who came into my office immediately after the 3rd grader today even began commenting on how my office smelled. Any suggestions on how to broach the topic of hygiene with students? All right, and then they wanted to say like how before I guess the social worker would do it. I would say since I actually have dealt with this, I haven't been the one to talk to them, but there's a couple kids like that at my elementary school, and yes, the social worker was usually the one to do it, but this person said they didn't have a social worker. I would have the person who has like a stronger relationship with the student. So if it's you, if they see you and you talk to them, you know, I would just calmly approach them. And what a lot of the social workers like to do, I've noticed, is they have a little like kit. So they'll have like deodorant in it and maybe like a body spray, you know, just making sure the kid isn't allergic to anything, and kind of just talk to them about like how as you get older, you know, your body changes, and sometimes that includes sweating more. And when you sweat more, we wear deodorant to help not sweat through our clothes, and so that we aren't producing a massive odor that can come with just getting older. You know, say something around those lines, and then you present them like, okay, and this is deodorant, put it on like in the morning after a shower, keep you smelling fresh and clean, and here's some, you know, like I said, if you have body spray, you can spray this on just to kind of give you a little boost of pleasant scents. So I would like for you to start trying this out today, you know, something like that. And then I'd also talk to their parent before any of this, because sometimes the parent might not be comfortable with you doing that, and they might want to do it, you know. They might be like, oh yeah, I've noticed that, let me talk to my kid later on and we're gonna fix the problem, you know what I mean? So I would start with the parent, and if you have to talk to the kid, I would talk to them saying something along the lines of what I had just said. You know, just don't make them feel bad. And especially as a kid, like, I feel like a lot of the kids don't even notice, especially when they're younger, because they go from this not being a problem to now it is, but they're not noticing it. It's people around them. So that's how I would approach it. I know that when I had my internship, we worked with students that were older but lower functioning, and it was a social skills group, and we did actually teach a hygiene, like, social lesson with them, just like how to stay clean, how to, you know, keep smelling good. And that's something you could also do, is find an educational video online, bring them to office, show them the video, ask them if they have any questions. There's a wide range of things that you can do, and you could do it and not offend the student at all too. All right, I think I'm gonna do 2 more questions. So I found one just now, and I'll look for one more. So this one was, what made you choose school psychology over school counseling? And it's funny, they go, you know, into this whole thing of how they're like considering school psych, but they keep saying it compared to school counselor. And it's really long, so I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but school psychologists are very different from school counselors in just the range of things that we each do. Some things can overlap though, of course, like, you know, we can both do a suicide threat assessment, and it's good if we work together on them as well. But honestly, for me personally, I never considered being a school counselor. And in my head, when I used to think of school counselors, like back when I was in school, I would just think of the school counselor as the person that you go to when you needed to get your schedule completed, you know? And obviously, I know they do so much more than that, and they're very busy. But for me personally, once I found out what a school psychologist is, I was drawn in by the testing factor and just all the other stuff that came with it. I mean, if somehow they got rid of all of the testing that we would do, there's still so much stuff that school psychs can do. But I find it really cool to help this student by putting all the pieces together to paint this picture of, okay, what are they good at? What do they have some difficulties in? And how can we help them? Because you have to look at so many aspects, and it's just really interesting to me to kind of see how all those could play a role in how that's affecting them in school, and then using that to in turn try to help them do the best that they can in school. And that is what drew me into school psychology, and I feel like that is something that a school counselor is not doing. They are not, you know, doing all the testing and meeting with the parents and consulting with teachers and you know what I mean? Like I said, some stuff overlaps, but that is a core part of school psych's jobs at the moment. You know, you never know, it could change in the future, but for school psychologists in today's age, that is a core set of skills that we have. And I think that's pretty cool. All right, the last one I found is pretty interesting. It said, do any of you feel like other psych students / people don't take school psychology as seriously as other psychology disciplines? And I actually never encountered that. Usually every time I told someone that I'm a school psychologist, their first reaction is, oh my gosh, that's great. We need someone like that. And again, these people that have said that are not other psych students in other areas, you know. But I never encountered other psych students kind of putting school psychologists down. If anything, it's usually they're intrigued. But I do think that a lot of people confuse school psychologists and school counselors. Like, if you just ask someone on the street, you know, what does a school psychologist do? They might think that you do what a school counselor does, and you're like, no, that's not really my job. So maybe I wouldn't say though that they're not taking it as seriously. I think there's a confusion on what we do. That's what I would say. I don't feel like school psychology isn't taken as seriously. I think that school psychology is oftentimes confused with other either psych areas or just other jobs in general. But guys, I know this video was a little different and there's so many questions on Reddit. I might have to do another video like this too. Let me know if you like videos like this. I could also just do a regular Q&A that you personally have questions on, and you can write those to me and I'll keep them and then make a video on it if I have enough of them. But this was fun because some of these questions made me think too, like, you know, things are different. I mean, I already know things are different depending where you're at, but they made me think like just how everyone's experience in the same field, depending on where you are in terms of job or if you're in school or not, and location, it all varies a lot. But this video was really fun to do. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you guys the next time. Bye.